All right, welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg. So glad to be talking today. It is a Friday free-for-all day, and hope you will call in, take advantage of that free-for-all. 240-242-5646, and you'll know that you can call in if you see the live button on your YouTube screen as you're watching this video. If you're not watching it live, then you won't see the live's red sort of, I guess, box in the bottom right. I'm looking at it right now. I can actually see it, or actually it's right underneath. Well, it's in different places depending on how large you have your screen, but it clearly says live when I'm live. And so you can call me if it says live, 240-242-5646. And whether it says live or not, one thing you can always do, if you haven't, well, I guess you can always do it. If you've already subscribed, I appreciate it. If you haven't yet done so, please do subscribe to Halitics. Please click like. You see the little blue button there showing the like to show your appreciation. I think it really does help us cut through the algorithm, right? To beat the algorithm. That's the YouTube algorithm. And finally, and perhaps most importantly of all, if you can, do join us on Facebook. And I guess I say if you can because not everyone has a Facebook account, but you could create one if you don't already. Join the Halitics group and have the conversation continue. We are a pretty contentious lot. There's a lot of back and forth. It can get heated, but one thing I strive for is some measure of respect, politeness. You just can't go after people personally. You can go after politicians, you can go after famous folks, you can go after people with money, with power. But if they're in the group, if you're in the group, if you're commenting, it should be, I don't want to say a safe space in that your ideas won't be challenged, and maybe sometimes they'll be challenged in a way that you find obnoxious. But we aren't about insulting people individually. And those who do, I suspend. I haven't banned anybody, but I may have to, and I don't want to because I want to hear everyone's voice. But you can't shout other people down. That's not the purpose of Halitics on Facebook. The purpose of Halitics on Facebook is so that we can hopefully, I'm not saying we always will, hopefully we'll learn from each other. There was a morning meeting, a breakfast club event this morning in Silver Spring. I think it's Silver Spring. Maybe it's still Chevy Chase. I'm not quite sure. Probably it is Chevy Chase. It's kind of weird in Montgomery County because a lot of the towns kind of bleed into each other and they're not necessarily incorporated. I don't know if I think there is a mayor of Chevy Chase. There may not be one of Silver Spring. It's kind of a county government. So it's never clear to me, or frequently it isn't clear to me what particular town or city an event is being held in. I think this was actually Silver Spring, but maybe I'm wrong. Parkway Diner, very nice. You can see completely packed, and it's not like there's a mirror in the back of that picture. There's actually a separate room which was also completely packed, and you can see there's a figure right in the middle of the crowd in the back of this image. Very small, but I'll show you who he is. Here he is. There he is. Jamie Raskin, Congress member. Now, I was in that crowd for a brief moment, but I decided I didn't want to hang around. It was standing room only. I got there, I thought, early enough, but for once, it wasn't. It's almost never fully packed. I've been to these clubs where we've had U.S. senators. I mentioned Chris Van Hollen twice. I've seen him at that club and Parkway Diner Club. And you could get a seat. It was crowded. People wanted to see Van Hollen, wanted to hear what he had to say, but Raskin really filled the room to the rafters. And I am not a Jamie Raskin fan, as people know who watch this program. I think I've used the term grandstander. Maybe I've been a little unfair to him. I want to give him credit. I went to this event with the hope of being able to ask him some tough questions. I was told before the event, as everyone else was, that Raskin would not be taking direct questions from the audience, but instead one had to submit questions and that the moderator would then choose among them what to ask. And I thought she did a really good job. Now, again, I wasn't in the room. I did watch, mostly listen, on the Facebook live stream. that Laura put up, and she did thank you, Laura. It was a great job. You can see how good the pictures are. That's taken from her live stream. So the questions were asked, and I want to also give credit to the host of the event, Susan, who I think she did a real nice job curating the questions. I don't think Jamie had anything to do with it. I got the sense he wasn't, real. He was there. He wanted to be part of it. He wanted to answer questions. I don't think he was involved in the preparation. I don't think he had time for any of that. He just left it up to the 18th District Democratic Club to handle. And, again, I think they did a good job, as good a job as you could. Now, there were people in the room who did ask questions. So even though you were supposed to submit questions in advance, for a good reason, he only spoke for a half hour. He was supposed to be there for a full hour. The original plan had been 7:15 to 8:15. He got there more like 7:30 and left a little after 8. So it was just over a half hour. Now, I did get an opportunity to talk directly to Jamie. So when I saw how crowded it was, I saw that it was very unlikely I would get to ask a question, or if I did, I would have to interrupt, which some people did, again, and it was fine. It was okay to do that. I could have done that. But instead, I sort of skulked outside the restaurant, and I saw Jamie pull up. He was let out. So I went up to him right away. He started putting on his tie. He looked a little like disheveled, okay, to be honest with you. Looks fine, that image. But he was putting his tie, and I asked him a question. I said, the first thing I asked him was, and before I tell you, I had been fumbling with my phone trying to get it ready to take a shot so I could actually video the conversation I was having in my darn phone. Sort of like a discount Samsung. It's not bad. I've never had problems with it like this, but the darn thing froze and I couldn't get this conversation recorded, which is fine. It probably was better because it was a little more informal and we were more talking back and forth than me holding a camera to Raskin's face. Anyway, I asked him, I said, what's your plan for Gaza? What's the Democratic plan for Gaza? Because we hear over and over in the media how, Trump's plan is ethnic cleansing. He's continuing the genocide. Now, I don't really adopt that view. I made it very clear on this program Wednesday, went over exactly what Trump said. I went to his words. I didn't go to the New York Times. I didn't go to the Washington Post. I didn't read what other pundits, analysts, experts had to say about Trump's plan, which again was the U.S. to take ownership. That's his word, ownership of Gaza. But again, I saw the logic behind it. Specifically, Gaza right now, basically uninhabitable. It's cold. It's raining. The amount of aid in terms of trucks that have to get in there every single day just to keep people alive is astounding. It's going to take years to rebuild. I watched movies. So let me give you an example of how long it could take. I remember seeing this movie because I was thinking about this in the wake of World War II, which did obviously in toto far more damage, right? Many, many millions of people killed across the entire continent of Europe, buildings, cities leveled. So I'm not saying that what Gaza endured in terms of the aggregate damage either to humans or to the infrastructure, to the cities itself, compares with what would happen to Dresden or, moving to the Japanese theater of war, Nagasaki, Hiroshima. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is that you can see movies, I'm thinking of a movie from the 60s where there are, it's location shooting of London. And this is the early 1960s. This is 15 plus years after the end of the war. And there are still blocks in London in this movie. Now, it's poor sections, it's working class, it's blue collar. There are still sections where you can see the rubble. Right? 15 years later, you can still see rubble where the Nazi bombs, the German bombs had fallen. So rebuilding Gaza is going to take well over a decade. And although the total amount of damage done during World War II was far greater than what Israel did to Gaza, in terms of concentrated damage, I'm not clear there's anywhere during World War II. Maybe Dresden, again, I mentioned the Japanese cities that we bombed with the A-bombs. Maybe those were worse. Probably they were, because just one atomic bomb killed, each of the two atomic bombs killed probably over 100,000. One certainly did, the second one on Nagasaki, the first one maybe less, but total killing by those two bombs may have exceeded the death toll in Gaza. So obviously, at least there, the damage was tremendous, but it clearly can take decades to rebuild. And since the entire region was largely leveled, it's not like in London where you had a block that got hit and you got another block that didn't get hit. And maybe within a block you have a couple buildings that were hit and they were broken. They were rendered uninhabitable. But there were other buildings in the same block in the same neighborhood throughout the city that you could live in. So people could find housing. They could move in with their parents or their kids or what have you, move to the country. You don't really have that options. You don't have those options in Gaza, since so much of the country was reduced to rubble by Israel and by the United States. So Trump says, hey, we got to get the people out of there. Where are we going to put them? Where are they going to go? And the response is, this is ethnic cleansing. This is from the Democrats making fun of him. A lot of Democrats saying, oh, now you're glad you voted for Jill Steinhouse? Look what you did. Look what you personally did to elect Jill Stein. I'm like, I'm sorry, you lost me, because Trump said that the Palestinians may have to move out. That means I should have voted for Kamala? At least now the bombs aren't falling on those Gazans. Now, again, Israel is a rogue state. Israel is an outlaw state. Israel and a criminal state. And I have terrible fears that Trump will green light more atrocities. And in fact, I think he probably has. He said to Netanyahu, yeah, go ahead, do what you want in the West Bank, at least for now. We'll see. But I'm not persuaded that somehow if we had elected Harris, the people in Gaza would be better off. They'd almost certainly, in my view, be worse off, because at least right now, the bombs aren't falling. Phone number here, 240-242-5646, 240-242-5646. Yeah, the phone's ringing. I don't know if you heard that, but probably not, but maybe. I'm glad you didn't. If you did, and if you did, well, c'est la vie. I spoke to Raskin. I said, what's your plan? What's the Democratic plan for Gaza? He's like, well, I said, well, don't you he said to me, well, what's your plan? So I said, well, I was sort of taken aback. I said, well, what's your plan for Gaza? And he sort of hems and haws a little bit and goes, well, what's your plan? I said, well, it's a one-state solution. The United States and Israel need to rebuild Gaza, and the people there need to be part of one state, one country from the river to the sea. And he goes, interesting. He said, don't you think your party, and he goes, well, your party too. Or I said, you're president too. And I kind of fumbled that, because, yeah, Biden's my president. He's the United States. He was the president. He's the United States president. And I did vote for him. So I kind of fumbled, oh, yeah, but he's my president. But I was really thinking he's the leader of your party. And I made that point. I said, your party funded, fully committed to what Israel did, razed Gaza to the ground. Don't you have an obligation to rebuild it, to come up with a proposal, a solution? And he just sort of looked at me. And he says, well, I want to hear what you have to say. So I said, well, I think you need to have a solution. You can't just mock Trump for his proposal. He goes, well, I don't mock Trump. I just disagree with it. So I said, fine, well, which isn't true, by the way. He's often mocks Trump. And if you watch the video, which I'm not going to play, he does. But again, I'm thinking, well, what is the alternative that you propose? And again, there was no answer. We saw this over and over today. Democrats have no answer. Republicans really don't either. What solution? What alternative do you have? I'll get to why they don't have an alternative, or at least the Democrats don't in a minute. I'm not really worried about the Republicans so much. I'll get to why the Dems don't have an alternative in just a moment. But I also said to Raskin, look, you want my opinion, because he said, I want your opinion. I want your advice. I said, all right, my advice is you have to present a compelling vision of a better America to the American people. You have to say, this is how things can be better. This is why you should elect us, because you will, if you elect us, we will enact Medicare for all. We will build a country with a better environment and good jobs. That's what you need to do. And, he just sort of looked at me, and that was kind of the end of the conversation. But it was interesting. At least I got to speak to him, so I'm glad of that. And I've spoken to him before. I mean, I don't think he knew who I was. I think he didn't know me from Adam, which irritates me a little bit, because I was actually at an event where he was the guest speaker, and I was the MC, right? It was an event for Mark Elrich when he was elected the county executive of Montgomery County, really a very progressive guy. And Raskin was the keynote speaker. And I introduced him. I was the MC. I went right down the list of all the people. He should have seen me up there. Maybe he did. I don't know. He didn't seem to know me from Adam. So, these people meet a lot of folks. Anyway, I was pleased to have an opportunity to buttonhole Raskin. I had a pleased to give him a piece, something to put in his ear. Did it go in one ear and out the other? Almost certainly. Will it have any impact? Almost certainly not. All right, 240-242-5646. And by the way, that's why I'm not voting Democratic. That's why I'm pushing folks over and over and over. We need to go in a very different direction. I did, and we'll get into the social media stuff. By the way, 240-242-5646. There's Ari. Good to see you, Ari. Haven't seen you in a while. I was hoping I hadn't lost you. I assume maybe you've just been busy. I guess you have a job, right? You're working, so good for you. This is something I was talking to Code Pink about. I guess this is sort of my job. Would be nice to get paid. I see so many ads now. You turn on a YouTube video and you see 3 ads. It's so annoying and irritating. But I would settle for just one and get a little bit of that sugar. Would be kind of nice. But it's not going to stop me from doing this. One point that Jimmy Dore made about the Facebook ads is you don't sell those ads yourself, so you don't have to kowtow to anybody. They're just put in there by YouTube. So you see somebody's ad, it's not like they have any influence whatsoever on the video that you're seeing, unless they put the ad in, unless the host themselves gives the ad, which I have seen. I think has Dore done some for crypto? That's very frustrating and annoying. I used to really like Jimmy. I don't really like him anymore for a variety, or I don't like him nearly as much as I used to. I think he's adopted some rather bizarre positions, but he still has a lot to offer in terms of his critique of the Democratic Party. So I texted this to a friend of mine who was in the meeting. He got there later than I did, but he got a seat because he's sort of an insider, and a seat was held for him. Or maybe he just pushed his way in. Anyway, he deserved it. I'm glad he got the seat. Are you inside the deli? It's completely packed with no additional admission. Then they did let people in, by the way. And then afterwards, so I text my friend. You can see the time, 7:13 a.m. The meeting was supposed to start, the Breakfast Club was supposed to start at 7:15. I was there by 7. Couldn't get in, got in at 7:15, at 8, and then probably Raskin, I had my conversation with him 7:25. He spoke at 7:30. He was done by a little after 8. So I texted my friend. I thought he did a good job, but I didn't hear an alternative vision to Trump's. That's what I'm saying is Democrats need to present to voters an alternative. All you heard from Jamie was how awful Trump is and the ways Democrats are trying to stop him, to gum up the works. But there was no acknowledgement that the works have already been terribly gummed up. Oh, let me turn on my light here just so you get a little bit better. There we go. See, now the lighting is better. I didn't even notice, although you can see my beard better too. The lighting wasn't bad before. I actually don't think it's bad. The Democrats' entire resistance is trying to just say no to Trump. And that's not resistance. Resistance is, hey, this is what we'll do that's going to be different. This is how we're going to make life better for you. This is how we're going to address the problems that we face. And so that was what I wanted to hear. I truly wanted to hear that from Jamie Raskin. I don't think you'll hear it from Democrats because an appealing alternative vision is one where the billionaires have less power, less wealth, less influence. And the Democratic Party is, like the Republican, controlled by the billionaire class. So I think that's why That's the answer. That's the very simple answer. And with respect to Israel, AIPAC, billionaires who are Zionists, the Israeli Hasbara has so much power, so much influence, that again, any attractive alternative to what Trump presented would be dead on arrival. Any proposal to actually have a one-state solution where the Palestinian people have true autonomy, where they govern themselves, would be a non-starter in Washington. So Democrats cannot provide any kind of appealing alternative, anything that would actually work, because what would work would not get approved, could not make it through Congress. So they're reduced to bashing Trump. And again, I think under the circumstances, Trump did what he had to do to try to placate Bibi, to try to maintain the ceasefire and hopefully continue it. So I'm just simply not going to bash him for that. There's other things, but not for that. So my friend wrote back after I wrote, there's no alternate vision. The response was, I don't know what you mean by an alternate vision. If there is one to be had, it is to preserve some version of the current federal government we have, where Department of Ed, NOAA, USAID, et cetera, survive. So I don't know about NOAA. I didn't know NOAA was under the knife. That's very, very troubling if it is. We certainly need the National Oceanographic, Atmospheric, National Oceanographic and Aeronautic, I believe, agency. We absolutely need that. So that's very unfortunate, because nowhere else can you get that aggregate of all the climate data. The government needs to keep that. But the alternative vision is something different. It's not just, we're going to preserve the status quo. The alternative vision is, okay, Trump's view of the world is it's America first, it's America-centric, but obviously there are a lot of exceptions. We're going to take over Gaza. We're going to take over the Panama Canal. But at the same time, we're going to have less of a footprint. We're going to scale back government dramatically. The alternative vision is, okay, we have a government. The government is going to be there to make sure that you get what you need to live a decent life, to survive. It's also going to be there to make sure no one has too much. It's also going to be there to work with other countries to promote a juster, fairer world, including a cleaner environment, wealth and income fairly distributed, and the like. That's the alternative vision that Jamie needs to promote. Okay, been watching on and off from Ari. Great to hear you. Doing great. Thanks, Hal. And I agree about Doris, Hal. He's changed. You should take over that job. Well, I'm trying. We're all doing the same thing. That's a good line, though, because, you can step in, right? Like, I always find that so interesting. There are so many. And isn't Raskin retiring? No, I don't think Jamie's retiring at all. I'm not aware of that. I think he's continuing in Congress. No, it's Chris Van Hollen, I believe, who might retire. But my wife said that's not true either. So maybe he isn't. I guess I was wrong. But I don't believe Jamie's stepping down, no. So regarding, that job of doors, I find it so interesting because anyone can, pretty much... anyone can create a YouTube channel, which is what Jimmy did. So the reason, you say his job is just because he has that mass audience, but that audience, well over 1 million subscribers. But I could have that too. I don't. But it's not like there was any barrier to entry. It's, someone would say, well, let's think. So Rachel Maddow. You should have her job. You should take her job. Well, no one's going to give me her job, right? MSNBC ain't hiring me to be Rachel Maddow. But there's no impediment to, fit logically to my taking Jimmy's spot is sort of one of the leaders of the progressive left online, although I don't think Jimmy is. But except that he has an audience and I don't. But why is that? Who knows? That said, I'm sure some people know. That said, I mean, we're all trying. We're all striving to get to that place where we have those audiences. But in a way, you can get that job. That's where I was going with this. In some cases, for example, the host of The Hill, right, the Hill Rising program, they started, I believe, maybe I'm wrong, the first significant hosts, anyway, of whom I'm aware, were Crystal and Sagar, and they did a really nice job. I thought they were actually a little bit more willing to challenge the establishment. Certainly Crystal was than now. And I'm not really a big fan of Sagar's sort of libertarian leanings, but, he's done some good work. And then they were replaced ultimately by Brianna Joy Gray and Robbie Suave. And then, Brianna left, and now she does her own thing. So you get that gig as the Hill Rising host. It's a big deal. You get a built-in audience. But again, I find it strange because if you liked Brianna Joy Gray on The Hill Rising, then just follow her to her program. What is it called again? Bad Faith, right? She does the Bad Faith podcast. And I like Bad Faith a lot. Now, I liked her with Robbie. I thought they did a good show. But just like Crystal and Sagar left, he could join her. Maybe he can't. Maybe there's some rule there. But, there's no barriers. Anyone can watch anything. Anyone can go on YouTube. So it's a little different than, traditional or legacy media, obviously. And I just am hopeful that a bunch of folks will say, hey, we really like what you're doing, Hal, and, we'll like and subscribe. By the way, just to finish off this point here from my friend, where there's legitimate oversight of the agencies to prevent Musk and his raiders from bankrupting the Treasury and shoving the money into their bank accounts. So that's the alternative vision, right? Is not something better than what we've enjoyed, not a world where, again, everyone has enough and no one has too much. That's not the alternative vision. It's just more of the same, more of what we had under Obama, more of what we had under Harris-Biden. And that's not what we want. That's not what the American mean. That's why Trump won. So that vision is a loser of a vision. It's not going to appeal to the voter. And that's where I think there's such a disconnect. I don't know why Democrats' leadership doesn't really get that. But clearly, because they don't want to, because they aren't prepared to buck their donors, their contributors. And it's very, very unfortunate. I also think, and I was talking to another viewer of this program who was, terrified of Musk, and Musk is going to do this and Musk is going to do that. We went over in some detail, some of the actions of Elon Musk and his Doge, Department of Government Efficiency. And it's not great. I don't love it. But the idea that this is somehow on a par with the genocide that Harris-Biden perpetrated on Gaza, I just don't see it. I really, really don't get that. I don't understand it. And, so we finished that off, that conversation I was having, the texts back and forth. I explained, here's what the vision that Jamie didn't provide is one of a peaceful, pro-worker, pro-environment America. And the response is, which is a conversation we can have if we survive this crisis. No, we only can survive this crisis, which is duopoly created by having the conversation now. As long as there's no movement by the Democratic Party to build that, not utopia, to build towards a better, fairer, cleaner, juster, more peaceful world. Unless the Democrat Party does that, then we'll not escape this crisis unless, and there's a second option, which is the one I think is the only option, because the Democrat ain't going to do that. We already know it. We have to come up with an alternative to the party itself. 240-242-5646 if you want to join me. I posted this on Facebook at Halitics. By the way, I was late today because I was not because of the RASKIN breakfast, but because I went down to Capitol Hill to work with Code Pink. And so I don't think that's why I put this in pink, but maybe. I guess I didn't put this in pink. Is that pink? I mean, I guess it is. I always think of pink as sort of a little more pale, but I guess you could also call that magenta, but it's the highlighting color or the background color that YouTube uses when you post relatively short questions or clips, and then people respond. So I posted this, and I was pretty pleased. I got a decent number of responses. This was actually in a follow-up. It came into my mind when I was, after I had spoken to Raskin, after I spoke to Jamie, and I was sitting in a coffee shop on Capitol Hill waiting for my Code Pink cohorts. And I wrote, after helping Israel raise Gaza, shouldn't Dems propose an alternative to Trump's plan? Not just to use the plan, not use his idea of we'll take ownership of Gaza, but to try to shame Stein voters. Because you see it all the time, oh, are you glad you voted for Jill Stein? I mentioned this earlier. If the Democrats have proposed such an alternative, what is it? I haven't seen it. And I thought, honestly, I didn't write that disingenuously. I thought maybe there is such a plan and I haven't seen it, because it seems so kind of obvious to me that you would, in fact, if you're going to sit there and bash Trump and say this moron, what a maroon, this fool, this clown, he just wants to turn Gaza over to his son-in-law. If that's going to be your take, aren't you kind of obligated to provide some alternative solution? Because there has to be something. The area, Gaza, the region has been leveled. Trump is absolutely right when he says it looks like a construction zone. He could not be more accurate or correct in his description. So something has to be done to address it. It's not like we can just walk away. So I say to Dems, if you're going to look at this construction site, right, this rubble that you created, you built that through unwavering commitment to Israel. You built, it wasn't Trump, he wasn't in power. He didn't send the guns and the bombs and the missiles to Israel. That was Harris Biden. That was the Congress, which Trump wasn't part of at the time. So you got to come up. You can't just sit there and point fingers. You got to have an answer. And the reason they don't have an answer is because if they said, well, they could say either we let Israel keep killing Gazans. They know that's not going to go over well. Or we need a ultimate peace, which they know will not go over well either. So they just keep their mouths shut when it comes to the question of what next, except Trump's an idiot, Trump sucks, we need something else. That's not helpful at all. It only makes things worse. So again, my question was, after raising Gaza, don't Democrats have an obligation to come up with some answer? So this was the first, I believe, comment. There were several. I'm going to go through them. And the reason I'm highlighting these is because they reflect the real spectrum of views, I think, on the left, from the more center-left Democrat to the hard progressive left that I think I am and that the person who posted this is, who, by the way, has also been on this program. I really thought that they might, meaning the Dems, find some moral outrage about Gaza once Trump was doing all the same things that Biden did. Should have known the entirety of their response would be smugness directed at all who did not vote for Harris. Well, there's a lot of truth. Pointing that out, Bakari Sellers on CNN was attacking the Muslim voters in Michigan, saying it was their fault. And aren't they sorry now because they can see their cousins in Gaza being forcibly removed? And, Sellers saying, you see, it's all your fault. It's your fault that we bombed your families, and it's your fault now that Trump is evicting them, which he hasn't done yet. I mean, maybe that'll happen. I'm not saying it won't, but that's not happened yet. So Bakari Sellers completely horrible. I mean, evil, sinister, soulless, with that attitude. Again, totally blaming the victim. Yes, they're smug, they're arrogant, these Democratic leaders, and they're shills, they're media shills. But I have to take one issue with this comment, which I don't think is completely fair. I really thought they might find some moral outrage about Gaza once Trump was doing all the same things. So remember, Gregory Meeks did hold up $1 billion arms transfer. And I believe the Senate confirmed that. So there's a little bit of a shift. Now, I don't know that I give the Democrats any credit for that, but, because it's so hyper, obviously, transparently partisan. But yeah, they did it. All right, 240-242-5646. 240-242-5646. RE also trumpeting Judge Napolitano. And I would just say this about Judge Napolitano. I think that's how I pronounce it. That's how I pronounce it. I don't know if that's how you're supposed to. I think one thing that the judge has done that's really, really, really good, I never watch his program, is he does center John Mearsheimer, who's clearly the most accurate, the most informed voice when it comes to foreign affairs. Spoke out early and often against the proxy war with Russia and Ukraine, totally vindicated by the facts on the ground. Spoke out early and often against our unwavering commitment to the genocidal Jewish state. So, yeah, I give Napolitano a ton of credit for that. Also, those who don't like the term Jewish state or genocidal Jewish state, I had got into that a little bit online with somebody, and I pointed out that Israel has officially declared itself the Jewish state. So I'm just using their own moniker. That's what they claim to be. So, yeah, I mean, Mearsheimer really good. Says, no, we shouldn't be all in for this, for these people. Again, want more? Join Halitics on Facebook. It's really easy. You just type Halitics into your search engine. Was on a call yesterday, just to digress briefly. I was on a call yesterday in the evening. It was for social media types like me, right? Because I do this live stream. So that's social media. I do YouTube. I'm a YouTuber. And it was about how to build it. And I can tell you who it was. It was by a group called Demcast. And I was skeptical, from the beginning. I thought this is pretty much a pro-democratic party group. That's what they're about. They're about presenting Democratic talking points and amplifying them. And they pretty much are. I mean, I was right about that, but I thought I could still maybe learn some little tricks of the trade and how to build. The folks who did it were very nice. Again, I don't agree with them politically, but I don't totally disagree, but I mostly disagree with certainly their strategy. In terms of the strategy being we have to back Democrats and amplify Democratic messaging. I think we have to back progressive anti-duopoly messaging. But I like a lot of what they have to say when it comes to how to promote social media and then how to, put together, groups of different social media personalities to amplify messages and to help each other build bigger audiences. And I certainly want to be part of that to the extent they'll allow me to be part of that. So I did jump in, at one point I said, hey, I'm not really your target. I'm not really here to promote Democrats. But they were very, helpful about ways we can build together. And I'm hoping, against hope that might occur. So this is something we do need to do, is join together and push for a truly progressive agenda. I thought I'd just mention the point. In response, anyway, back to where we were, which was, what are the Democrats proposing? What solutions do they offer? We've been through it. No vision, just go after Trump, stop Trump, resist, but no answer where we go after we resist, and no answer for what we can do. What can we possibly do to make it better? Gaza. And so it's very disappointing. I don't see how we get to a better place without that. The question was answered by another online person who is very critical of what I have to post and very pro-democratic, and I believe, in fact, is a Democratic Party insider. I believe works for the Democratic Party, or at least a county party, not the big national party, not a state party, but a county party. Still, good, if that's what you want to do. So the question is, what vision do the Democrats have? What do they propose specifically for Gaza? And this is the answer that was given by this Democratic employee, representative, supporter. Well, they did put forth impeaching him yesterday because of the Gaza Riviera stuff. They are sort of meeting themselves, coming and going with lawsuits, overnight talkathons, rules, maneuvers, etc. I want to stop it. I highlight that's exactly correct. The commenter, the poster here is 100% right. That is exactly what Democrats are doing. That's exactly what Jamie Raskin talked about at his meeting. So these are folks in very different parts of the country, in totally different districts, but they are saying the same thing. Yeah, we're having these meetings, we're strategizing, we're trying to figure out how to build a resistance. But, and you can see, and to slow the devastation, and everyone attempts to try to stomp the madness. Okay, so that's the answer to the question, but it's no answer because there's no vision, right? Nothing. And there's no proposal for Gaza, which what this is about directly. That was the question I asked. What are they saying about Gaza? And nothing. Impeach him. But that's not a plan for Gaza. That's not an alternative solution. And good luck with the impeachment, because nothing Trump said in his speech is illegal. He may overreach. There may be ways he might break the law, but at this point, he didn't do that. So after not answering the question, which I think is a really relevant, important question, not like it's a BS, stupid question. It's a relevant question. What are the Democrats going to do? But after not answering that, then they go on to say, you, Hal, and people like you helped elect him by dissuading people from voting for the other, better yet imperfect candidate. So I was like, what? What is that? That's got nothing to do with what my post was. I mean, I didn't have a problem. You want to put it up there, that's fine. Go ahead. I don't begrudge you. I love comments. I will take any comment, but it just seemed to me so non-responsive to try to blame me when I wasn't trumpeting Trump. I wasn't saying how great he is. I just said, what you don't like what he says? What are you going to do instead? And then the answer is, well, it's you elected him. Okay. And there was more back and forth. I'm not going to go into all of it because it's not. But again, this is the way the conversation goes. This is why I'm so depressed, because we can't get together and say, what are we going to do to make things better? When I ask Democrats, what's your plan? What's your vision? We'll stop Trump. You didn't stop him before. He's more popular than you are. Some of the mess that you're criticizing his proposed cleanup is the mess you made yourselves. And you don't have any idea how to clean it up. Or at least you don't propose any. You don't suggest any. So in response to, well, you helped elect Trump, I'm like, I didn't push for Trump. What? That's not relevant. Anyway, but you said she's a better candidate. There was a lot more. This may not make 100% sense. There was a whole lot more back and forth. And I'm like, okay, well, you just said she's a better candidate, right? Why? We kept hearing that too. Why? What's so great about Harris? And answers would be like, well, wait till she comes into office. I'd say, she's not going to stop the war in Gaza. She says she's all in favor of it. She's all for giving Israel every bomb, we'll never cut off Israel. That's what she said. No, I'll never cut off Israel. So, well, then why should we vote for her? What's going to be better? What is she going to do? Just wait till she's in office. Wasn't that the response? Wait till she's not shackled to Biden, or she can't buck AIPAC at this point. That was the answer. I was so unsatisfied. It was not acceptable. It was not enough, clearly. So, but you're saying she was better. Why? You didn't tell me then. Tell me now. And that was the end of the conversation. That was several hours ago. We were doing back and forth pretty regularly. Every 15, 20 minutes, one of us would respond to the other. And then after I posted that, crickets. Total crickets. So another poster, another pro-Dem poster. I don't think this person works for the Democrat Party, but maybe they do. I don't think they do. I think they just are a true believer. So my question, and this was this was more responsive, but not really responsive. Actually, now that I think about it, it wasn't responsive to the question is, what's the Dem proposal for Gaza? That was the question. So, and then I add, don't they have an obligation to come up with something, right? So the response is, well, that would be nice, meaning it would be nice if the Democrats came up with an answer. Why don't you propose something? I'm like, wait a second. I didn't destroy Gaza. I was against it. I spoke out against what Israel was doing. I didn't create this mess. They did. Your Democratic Party and your Republican Party created this mess. The Republican leader has proposed a solution. Is it a great solution? No. Is it something that I would want to have happen? No, I don't want the Palestinian people relocated unless it's absolutely a given they're going to be returned or they have the right of return at every point. Because some people, you relocate them, they might be like, hey, I like Cairo. I don't want to go back to Gaza City. Hey, I like, wherever. I like Amman, Jordan. I like London. I like New York. Right? My relatives, they left Russia. They left Ukraine, whatever it was, the Pale of Settlement. They left it. They didn't go back. I mean, my great uncle apparently did go back. He didn't repatriate to Russia, but he would go back to visit every now and then. Maybe he had some business interests. I'm not quite certain about all that. But immigrants would do that. There was a movie called Brooklyn with... I forget her name, Cerise, I think is her name, Cerise, Saorise, I forget her last name. I didn't love that movie. It got a lot of good reviews. Some people really liked it. My mom liked it, I think, because it kind of was from her generation when it was taking place in Brooklyn, where she grew up. So Cerise is an Irish woman who, because of economic situation, circumstances, not political. Now, my family left Russia because of the politics. They were Jewish. They were being persecuted. I guess they were forced to, maybe even were forced to leave. But then they could have gone back. Not all Jews were, had to leave Russia. And some went back and some died because they went back because the Nazis murdered them. Depending on where they were in Russia. If you were in Eastern Russia, okay, but west of Moscow, then especially in Ukraine, Belarus, you were probably going to get murdered. So in Brooklyn, this I think it's based on a true story. Cerise, well, that's the actress. She goes back to Ireland. She's trying to decide, should I stay in New York? Should I move back to Ireland? I think she ultimately decides to stay in New York. People went back and forth. Some of the Gazans, they get to go to New York for whatever reason. Maybe they have family in New York. Or it could be anywhere in the United States. And they're like, hey, I really like it here. I don't want to go back. Fine, don't go back. But if you want to go back, you should be able to go back. So yeah, that would be my answer. And I propose it. So this commenter says, well, you're so smart. You think the Democrats need to come up with something. Well, of course they do. They created the problem. But that said, I did, in fact, give an answer. And I followed up with another question. After destroying Gaza, my point stands. After destroying Gaza, don't Dems have responsibility to put it back together again? Again, no response. Nothing. All right, 240-242-5646. I think a lot of the criticism, and this is tough, because a lot of what Trump's doing I don't like. He's taking a sledgehammer to the federal government. This is going to cause a lot of problems. I don't trust Musk. I do think he's very likely using his office and will use it to enrich himself. Now, does that mean he's stealing money from the Social Security funds? It could happen. Is it far-fetched? I don't think it's that far-fetched. I think anybody who could turn a spigot of dollars into their own bank would try to do it. I think, or many people would. But, it doesn't look like that's exactly what's happening. This isn't about giving government money to Musk. It really is, I believe, about taking an axe to the federal government, which is kind of what Trump promised he would do when he was elected. Now, is there going to be a lot of corruption involved? I'm sure there will be. And it's very worrisome. But again, this idea that, and I hear this, I'm so afraid of Trump. He's so bad. He's such a monster. And I don't exactly disagree with that. My problem is, it's not just Trump. The attitude, okay, well, if we just had the Democrats back, we'd all be okay. No. If we had the Democrats, there'd be hope. No. That's just, you could have hope. I mean, that's your sense. That's your feeling. But it's not hope based on reality. The reality is that Biden, whatever you want to say is the world's greatest threats, he exacerbated them. Harris was going to do the same thing. She was going to follow the same exact playbook. She made that 100% clear. So the idea that, there were things the Democrats didn't do, and I didn't like the war in Gaza, and I like the war in Ukraine, but what Trump's doing is even worse. I don't see that. I don't see it. I don't understand. I frankly don't understand it, except that that's what the lamestream corporate media wants you to believe. So a lot of the fears around Trump are, he's going to destroy U.S. aid. It's so terrible. How could he do this? U.S. aid is this wonderful, humanitarian organization. And it's just not true. So here's Jacobin, far left, January 29 of this year. U.S. foreign aid was always about furthering U.S. interests. So that money that we were giving in Central and South America and in Asia, we weren't spreading that around like fertilizer so that the flowers that, could grow in Nicaragua and Honduras and Paraguay, so that the people who live there could enjoy some nice, sweet-smelling roses. No. We gave them some fertilizer so they could grow roses for us and sell them to us at relatively low prices and make more profits for the rose company. And so the idea that, this is some terrible crime to defund U.S. aid runs smack up against the fact that a lot of what U.S. aid did is really, really bad, really harmful. That said, people become dependent on it. You cut it off at the knees, there's going to be a lot of pain. And really bad pain too, right? Probably some people will die, will starve. This is the absolute wrong way to go about it. But to just simply point fingers at Trump and Musk and say, look at how awful they are defunding this wonderful program, well, that's just not the case. And so this article in Jacobin goes through some pretty good examples, or pretty bad examples. Ultimately, the bottom line here is we've spent millions, billions of dollars in these countries, these poor countries, the global south, and they're worse off than ever. Look at what happened to Haiti. We poured hundreds of millions of dollars into Haiti for NGO. This was in the 90s. Not government organization, NGOs, non-government organization initiatives and state-led democratic programs. And the country has completely imploded. We financed why? Because those programs didn't lead, and they weren't designed to lead to wealth and income land redistribution. They weren't designed to do that at all. They were designed to make Haitians dependent on foreign owned multinational companies. We, through U.S. aid, financed micro-development projects in rural Paraguay, not to make, not to empower and enrich impoverished peasants and make life better for them and create a sustainable economy. That wasn't the purpose. It was so that they would have just enough, that they would have a little bit of a stake, the peasants would, in a capitalist economy, and therefore wouldn't join socialist and communist insurgent groups. What history has taught us is even if you're a very small landowner, you tend to be, and peasants so often are, very conservative, very much determined to hold on to what little plot of land you have. You want that land. Now you own it. You work so hard. You sweat over it. Man, you do not want to give it up. And so if there's some Marxist, Leninist, socialist group there that's talking about land reform, even if they're not targeting you directly, you're like really nervous. You're scared. You don't want to have to give up your little postage stamp lot. So again, what these aid programs did is break up, divide working class coalitions that could have brought down capitalist, corrupt, militarist governments that the U.S. government and U.S. corporations loved because they were great for business. And so these projects also kept the socialist movement in Bolivia from growing as well. So these are what USA did, and the impact. And I know some say, well, the soft power that we used did lead to better quality of life. And it's true for some. Those peasants in Paraguay that became landowners, yeah, their life did become better. And I don't completely ignore that or pretend it doesn't matter. It matters. But ultimately, the result was and is and still impoverished global South. A devastated ecology and environment throughout Latin America and Africa and Asia. I can't sit here and tell you, oh yeah, this is such an awful thing to defund U.S. aid. U.S. aid did a lot of really bad stuff that led to ultimately really reactive responses, right? Reactionary responses, pro-military, pro-capitalist responses. The EU, now moving to Europe, so-called peace laboratories were placed in Colombia, right? And Colombia, we also know, has had terrible problems, economic problems, military problems. And one of the ways that this is manifests itself is through class warfare, with these counterinsurgency programs just stomping on Colombians. We know that the Colombian elites have murdered dozens, I think hundreds of labor leaders over the past 20, 25 years. The money that was spent in Colombia has weakened revolutionary left-wing movements designed to empower those workers. And again, more micro development money that ties peasants to Western multinationals, agricultural exports, and the like. There's just no way to reconcile that history with some kind of do-gooder, selfless, humanitarian organization. It's just not what U.S. aid has been. So Jacobin winds up and says, hey, one of the reasons you're reading all about how terrible this is, about all the harm that's likely to result from the freezing of aid through U.S. aid is because the billionaire class, a sizable percentage of the billionaire class, profits from U.S. aid. Not directly, but tamps down resistance, tamps down the possibility of a revolution, and maintains a somewhat quiescent, somewhat docile, exploited group of workers. I'm not going to shed tears for that group, for that organization. Not really that hard to see this as a regressive tool. And what the writer kind of winds up here, just to get to the end of this. These programs, meaning USAID and the like, don't not only fail to address the region's crises, they exacerbate them because they reinforce the very structures that perpetuate the problems. And nearly a century into this model, I said this earlier, the historical conditions remain intact. I would say they're even worse in many cases. When you hear the Democrats, others gnash their teeth and cry crocodile tears about U.S. aid, you might want to think about this closing paragraph in Jacobin. The revelations of how the U.S. aid packages, the way they've been used to maintain Western control, Western influence, corporate-friendly governments in these countries, unmasks the illusion that the foreign policy that they're conducting is benign, is positive, is helpful. When we see what it really has done, we're showing how the leadership, the billionaire elites, the corporate ownership has contempt for oppressed majorities and just simply throws them a few shekels to keep them from tearing down this oppressive system. It's all concealing through a facade of humanitarian benevolence, an incredibly unjust, unfair, inequitable system. All right, well, that's the hour. It's actually gone by. I had some other stories. You know what? I was going to talk a little bit about those hundreds of millions of dollars that apparently have gone to Lutheran social agencies that help immigrants. And I'm still not satisfied. I don't really know exactly why they're getting so much money. I want answers. There was a good news report out of Iowa talking about Lutheran Immigration Services of Iowa, which I thought was really helpful, or Lutheran Social Services of Iowa, Lutheran Services of Iowa, actually. But it didn't tell me why. And they're not included, by the way, in that spreadsheet that I talked about yesterday as one of the groups getting money. But I still don't understand why in 2 months the U.S. government spent well over $600,000 in just 2 months to a few that went to just a few of these groups. I'd like to know if we need to spend $1 billion, it was over 600 million. So let's say that's in 2 months. So let's say that works out to $3.5–4 billion a year. If that money is being used to truly help immigrants in this country, whether they're here with or without documentation, that seems reasonable. It really does. I can understand that. But me, when I looked at that spreadsheet, it sort of feels like the tip of the iceberg. It feels like there may be so much more money, and we should know about it. So I don't fault Doge for telling us about that. I just want to know what our government, where that money is going. Now, I'll say finally, I don't really suspect the organizations. I don't. Maybe there's some corrupt people in them, but if you saw this news report, they seem truly sincere, and I believe that. But the fact that the organizations themselves may not be corrupt doesn't mean they're getting all the money, right? Maybe they're honest, but there are these giant checks flowing around. Who's getting the money? Are these organizations really using every penny? Are they getting the money that's been earmarked for them? I'll continue to follow that story. Thanks so much for watching Halitics. I really, really, really appreciate it. I hope you have a great weekend, and I believe, could be wrong, I believe we do have Arlen Monday, this Monday. Enjoy your weekend.